good. I know a lot of you guys have heard, like Chris said, we've been going through life together at church for quite a while, but some of you guys don't know me quite as well. So I do want to give my testimony real quick. Kind of tell you how I came to the Lord. When I was about 10, my brother got. I guess I was about 10. It was somewhere in that range. My brother is 2 years younger than me. He got radically saved. Like he knew that he was a sinner. He knew what Jesus did, gave his life. He was on fire. Like, I was like, wow. And so I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, man, I know I'm not as committed as him, you know. And I'm not saved at that point. And so I was like, okay, God, when I get good enough to deserve what you did for me, then I'll get my life. All right, fast forward, I was about 23, 24, okay? Still not saved. And so, I'd go to church. I definitely believed, but I had not, I was still kind of waiting. So anyway, Mom comes to me one day and she says, we're thinking of joining Southland Church. I don't know if she remembers. And I had no idea what that meant. So I'm like, I've been going to Southland Church. Sounds good to me. And so she comes back a few days later. She says, so when do you want to get baptized? And I'm like, what? Where did I miss a conversation? So anyway, so she explained to me, and so she explained to me that's what it meant. Like, in order to be a member, you had to be saved, and that shows how little I knew at that time, and so, which makes total sense. And so I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. And she's like, okay, we'll think about it. So I did, and I was like, man, it's been 14 years since I've been waiting to be good enough, thinking someday I will be good enough. And, like, it has not gotten closer. It has not gotten closer to where I feel like I would be worthy of what you did for me. So I said, God, you're not getting much in this deal. I mean, you know me. But I do believe, and I know what you did for me. And so back up just a few months before that, and like Nate will laugh at this, because I was like just realizing that I needed to make some changes in my life. Okay, now I'm thinking I gotta get more organized. Look at him shaking his head. He's my manager, so if you don't know that, and so that has still not happened. All right, that's why. And so and it was like not. I mean, like my sweetie will laugh at this because like my house was a mess. You know that I'm still not much help in that. So like, but what I didn't realize was that Jesus was the change that I need. So when I gave my life to him, I had no idea the journey that was about to take place. Like, I knew nothing except for what he had done for me. I remember one time before I got saved, I was riding with David, my brother, and he said, I don't know why you haven't, like, what's holding you back, but if you ever have questions, let me know. So my question was, so I'm like, I had not thought about that. I really didn't have any questions, but, so your mind starts thinking, I'm like, why didn't anybody in the New Testament have a last name? This was the deep, questions that I was pondering, And so, like, I literally knew nothing. And so I didn't know you became a new creation. Um, my brother gave me a Bible, and it had that verse where it talks about you are now a new creation. And I was like, well, that's interesting. But I still didn't think too much of it. Like, I kind of thought it was the end of the journey. Like, I had arrived, like, that was the end. I did not realize what God had in store for me. So I was going to Southland, didn't think too much else about it. My brother comes up to me later that year, and he says he was going to a church called the Church at Lexington, and he was like, we've got a bowling out, young adults, you have a bowling alley. There's probably going to be like 3 of us, right? And stuff. You want to go bowling? And I'm like, sure, and stuff. So like I go there, and there was a lot more than 3 people. He totally lied to me, and so I'm hanging out with them, and they're bowling, and I'm like, man, whatever they got, I want. It wasn't that they were being super spiritual, they were the light of the world. And so I go to Dave afterwards, and I'm like, do you care if that was probably on a Friday, do you care if I come to church with you Sunday? So I go, and I knew myself. I was shy. I mean, I was extremely shy in high school, so much I couldn't talk to my friends, okay? So I knew myself, and I was like, if I don't dive in full blast, I'm just gonna be in the background sitting and stuff. And so I go to church. I find out they're going on a boat trip that week, and I'm like, oh, I'll go. Like the young adults. It's like whatever's coming. They're having a young adult group. Like, okay, I'm in. And so all I knew at that point was I was hungry and stuff. I probably didn't even know that, but I was and stuff. And I was so. Fast forward a little while later, I'd been blessed to be around some people that I really respected and stuff, but I was still like I knew I was a newbie Christian. I knew nothing and stuff. I was still not bold at all. Stuff. They ended up having this thing called Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, and what it is a church deal that is put on. And like 2 people come in, and they teach the church. They come in on a Friday. They teach the church how to set up the stage. They pick people to be in the play, and you put it on Sunday night. Like it is like, and the whole thing was bathed in prayer. It was really cool. And so that, long story short, that weekend, well, first of all, something happened before. The night before it happened, I felt like I was supposed to go on Friday night when the people were first coming in and help out with this thing. That was about it. And the night before, there was a girl that I was interested in, and I don't even remember who it was, but I just remember I got really frustrated, And so I did not want to go. Like on Friday, I would all day, I'm like, I do not want to go, right? And so I'm like, but Lord, I think you want me to go to this thing. So I go, and I walk in the doors, and I'm like, I felt peace. And I was like, okay. Like, none of that stuff that happened the previous night, mattered. And so, and it wasn't, anyway. And so, long story short, that weekend ended up changing God changed my personality. He gave me boldness. And he told the guy that was in charge of like the young adult group, it was going to happen. That guy was playing Satan in the play, and he's like, while I was on stage, he's like, God's like, I'm going to give that guy boldness. Like, and here's what God did to do it for me. And so I was on stage. I had gotten a role in the play. I'd never acted before. Had like no volume. Like when it was a pretty big church. We built this sanctuary and stuff. It was a good sized church. And like whenever I was practicing, I could not speak loud enough. Like they could not hear me. And so they're like, what are we going to do? You know? And so they're like putting mics around the stage and stuff like that. And you're like, go over to talk about this. So we go before a little bit before, and we they're praying for me, and they're praying for my voice. They're praying for, and this is about an hour before before everything. In the meantime, everybody's coming in. We get in there, and there's like, the place is full, and I'm like, there's 500 some odd people, and I'm like, you've got 10 minutes to show people what you think of Jesus. And I was not going to need any mics. And so after that, like, I was literally a different person. That like, at first I thought that's when God changed me. No, I was changed when I first received him. That was just the event that he used to speed up the process, you know. But like, so from then on, it was like God. There's a lot more to my story, but like a lot to this journey. I love the story of the journey. Like, I love, one of my favorite parts of the Bible is Moses at the burning bush. And I'm always talking to people about this, and because it's the beginning of a journey. Moses says, who should I say has sent me, right? And he says, well, tell him I am sent you, okay? So, and so then he goes on this journey, and he starts to, and at times Pharaoh, we go through the plagues, and Pharaoh's ready to let him go, and God's like, no, my people have not learned that he is the answer, right? So because when he said I am, at first I was for a while I was like, what did you mean by that? He's meaning I am what they're looking for. Just like when I knew I needed changes but didn't know what it was, he was what I was looking for. It's the same thing today. People, and so what's cool about that journey is like, their plagues would happen. God's like, no, they're not ready yet. And he'd harden Pharaoh's heart. And because his people were not ready yet. So they go through, right? And they eventually finally gets to the 10th plague, and he's like, okay, they're ready to go. He hardens Pharaoh's heart again because his people aren't ready yet. They haven't got it yet, you know? So what happens? There's a pillar of fire come down, right? He's like, think about this. Put yourself in. If there was anybody in the world that ever knew there was a God, it was the Israelites at that moment, right? There's at night there's a pillar of fire separating the army from him. God parts the seas. They're walking through it. We know later that God did this like 4 times, so it wasn't that big deal to him. But at the time, it had to be like, that is crazy, you know? And so they get to the other side, and like 30 days later, they're complaining, right? Okay, so, all right, so fast forward later, Moses is on the mountain. He says he's talking to him as a friend, right? And he says, just show me your glory. It's no longer like, tell me who you are. And God says, okay, now I'm going to tell you who I am. He says, because who he is part of his glory. And he says, I'm going to pass in front of you. You're going to change to white, all this stuff that happens and stuff. But I'm also going to tell you who I am. right? And so he does that, and I'm just like, man, God, when he was on the burning bush asking for who you were, you could have told him who you were right then, but you knew Moses wasn't ready. Now, through all this stuff, his people are finally like, I mean, I just love the journey. So go back to the burning bush. I read something about it this week that I was like, I have never seen that before, or I've never caught it before. Before he said, "Tell him that I am," Moses asks his name, and he says, "I am who I am." I was always like, okay, I don't get that. What do you mean by that? All right. I think what he was saying is like, his people had been there for 400 years without, in slavery. You think there were some questions? Is God, is he, what's going on here? 400 years. Think about that. That would be the 1600s if we went back 400 years. U.S. isn't even here. I mean, that is, so he said, I am who I am. He basically says, Joel was praying today, he says, man, it is crazy that we get to praise you and sing to you, and that you would listen to us. When he was praying, and I was like, that's where my mind's been all week, is that, it is crazy how thorough he is. And because there are things in the Bible that I was telling, we had dinner with the Rams the other night. I was like, it's crazy to me, some of the things he puts in the Bible. I probably wouldn't have put I'm like, God, I probably wouldn't have put the word predestination in there. But he said, I am who I am. I probably wouldn't have put David and Bathsheba in there. David's his golden boy, right? I mean, I probably would have left that out. And yet, God said, I am who I am. I want you to know everything about me. I am not going to apologize for who I am. We as a church do not have to apologize for who God is. We do not have to, he is who he is. And the cool thing is, when we get to know who he really is, it's going to be like on the mountain, and he's going to be like, I am the one who forgives, and I am not asked. One of the things he said on there is I will forgive who I will forgive, and I will have mercy on who I will have mercy. What an awesome verse, because here's what that's saying. He's saying, I'm not asking anybody else's opinion of you. He has decided what he thinks of you, and he loves you dearly. All right, now I get to my notes. All right. So I came across. First of all, I do want to back up. Derek hit a verse last week, and I was like, man, what a verse. I'm thinking about this for elders and stuff. It was 30, Isaiah 31, 30 verse 1. Okay, he says, and you guys may remember it. He says, "Woe to the rebellious children, declare the Lord, who execute a plan, but not mine." Man, I just want to assure you, that is not our goal here. All right, to execute, if you have any, but man, it can happen. We can get so wrapped up in what we think that we can get off track. We have to be very careful. I want to Yeah. What a great reminder. Um, I want to, let me see. I want to look at a verse. I don't know if I put it up there on the thing. It's Genesis. It's Genesis 18:17 through 19, I think. And so here's the story. This is with Abraham, right? And the three angels come to see Abraham, and they say, they're about to go to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And he says, there's a great verse that says, should I tell Abraham what I'm about to do? All right? And he said, because I'm about to go to Sodom. And he's like, and he goes on, because Abraham's a chosen person and stuff. And so, since Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and him, so we could say, oh, well, that's Abraham. You guys do realize you're the light of the world, right? And so, like, he has chosen us, which is crazy because he knows us. Like, and he said, man, I want you to be light. So why is this verse, why did I talk about this verse? Because, like, God thought for a second, I love this, he thought for a second, do I just do what I'm going to do in Sodom and Gomorrah? Or do I let him know what's going to happen, right? So he said, like, because he could have certainly just done Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And Abraham would have been like, he probably, I don't know what Abraham would have thought, but we do know that when he told him what he was going to do, Abraham thought he thought he hadn't thought it through, right? Because he starts trying to talk him down. He said, what if there's 50 good people, right? Anybody who's talked to me very much probably has heard me talk about this story because I love it. Because I think it explains people where people are today. And they, like, the world as a whole basically thinks God has not thought things through. And so he goes through and he says, well, what if there's 50 people? What if there's 45? He goes down by 5 all the way down to 10. And then I think he thought he was safe. He's like, And so he goes through and he's like, and then he realizes, he gets to Sodom and Gomorrah, and Sodom and Gomorrah happens, he gets destroyed. I don't see Abraham saying, God, like questioning God anymore. He was like, oh, God knew what he was doing. So the reason I bring that verse up, though, is because there are things in the Bible that I'm like, just like Joel was praying, I'm amazed that you put that in there. Here's the way, John, let me see, I don't know if I put this one in. John, I think it's 18, here, I'll find it, just a sec. It's where Jesus is on the cross and he says, it is finished. All right? So going back to the journey with Abraham, with Moses, the burning bush, I would say to the end of the Old Testament, there was a journey. God is teaching his people, hey, you need me. Like, you cannot do this on your own. Because he basically eliminated all the excuses. He said, what if I send a worshiper that will show you what it's like to worship me and follow me and stuff? What if you had that example? What if you had the rules of how to be good enough? What if I gave you that? What if I gave you the wisest man that ever lived? What if I showed you over and over in the book of Ezekiel, like, things that would happen that at the end of it you will know that he is God, right? In Ezekiel, that statement, then you will know that I am God, happens 37 times. It's that statement in the Bible is there 40 times or something like that. I like if you Google it. It's crazy. Like there's a definite thing. And yet he uses all these different ways, and he's just eliminating excuses. And to say, well, if only God would have done this, then we would have lived well enough. So Jesus comes, and they're like, all the excuses have been taken away. All right. So then he walks on earth. He delivers. He walks on earth, and then he goes to the cross, and he says, "It is finished." So here's my question: God, you didn't have to give us the rest of the New Testament. You had done enough. Like, that is crazy to me. But back in Genesis, when we were talking with Abraham, I think it's the same thing. He just wants us to know. He didn't have to do it. He goes so far beyond what he has to do. Like, he is up there still giving intercession for us. Man, sorry, sweetie. I told Sweetie's like, now don't do the thing where you go like this, like this, like that. So but I'm sorry, but I get excited, and I start talking. But I get excited because of who he is, and so most of the rest. But let's talk about most of the rest of the New Testament, because all right, there's two at the end. He comes back, and there's basically two great commandments. I would say there's certainly the one that we're taking part of today, and sending people to the other side of the world and stuff. The second great commandment, to me, is when he's talking to Peter, and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" Because here's the thing. This is after Peter's denied him, and it says at the beginning. This is such a cool chapter, because at the end of John 20, somebody pointed out one time, it sounds like he wrapped up the book. Like if you read John 20. It sounds, and then there's this other chapter, and it's almost like John didn't want to have to write that one, because it says at the beginning of it, Peter says, "I'm going fishing." I'm going back to my own way of life, and the disciple says, "I'm going too. We're going too." And so then Jesus comes up. It's so cool how Jesus handles this. He says, "Hey, cast your nets on this side. Have you guys cast your?" And they start to pull in the fish, and immediately. That's how he initially called them, before they knew anything. Basically, Jesus said, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And so he's talking to Peter, and he says, "Peter, do you love me?" He says, "You know I do." And he asks him 3 times, and he says, "Feed my sheep." That is the second great commandment to me. And most of the rest of the New Testament is focused on that. So like all these letters to churches, now there is definitely some things where we can take and we can say, oh, that's also applies to the other commandment. And there are some things that I hope as a church we go to extremes as. All right, one of them, is the fruit of the Spirit. All right, and here's why. Galatians 5. Do you have that one up? No, I don't. Yeah, I did give you that one, I think. Galatians 5:22 through 24. And you guys know this. So, it's the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. All right, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. Gentleness, self-control, and then it says, against such things there is no law. That is an amazing statement, because here's what he's saying. He's saying, if you want these things, there is no limit to what you can have. He said, I am not going to limit you. You want self-control, I can help you with that. If you want gentleness, I can help you. If you want goodness, I can help you with that. And I love like Elijah and Elisha, right? They're talking, and at the end of Elijah's life, he says, Elijah's like, can I do anything for you? And he's like, well, I want a double portion of what you got, right? And so he says, Elisha said, that's going to be a hard thing. He says, he's like, I'm. In fact, he doesn't guarantee he's going to get it. He says, my cloak falls, right? Then you got it. Because they said, I don't know if you're going to get it or not. Basically, is what he said. But like, when I look at this and I see against such things there is no law. I challenge you to try to find the limits to that, because I bet you're not going to find it. I bet you're not going to find. And I love it because he talks about this fruit of the Spirit multiple places, and one of them is in 2 Peter 1, and he says this. He says, well, let me see if I didn't give you much, did I? All right, 2 Peter 1. All right. Now for this, this is 1:5. Now for this very reason also, applying all diligence in your faith, supply moral excellence, and in your moral excellence, knowledge, and in your knowledge, self-control, and in your self-control, perseverance, and in your perseverance, godliness, and in your godliness, brotherly kindness, and in your brotherly kindness, love. He's basically saying, don't get complacent. Don't just settle. He's like, I got more for you. You're doing well in this area. Go get this too. I got so much for us. But this is the cool thing. It says, for if these qualities are yours and increasing and are increasing, they render you neither useless nor unfruitful in the true knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. For he who lacks these qualities is blind or short-sighted, having forgotten his purification. Wow, I was right. Therefore, brethren, be all the more diligent to make sure about his calling and choosing you. For as long as you practice these things, you will never stumble. What a thing that we could just like be extreme about. All right? Let me see. I want to share one more story that I came across this week. I've been reading in Joshua, and Joshua it's part of that journey, and so I'm just amazed. And so Joshua, he you know the story, where first time they go to the promised land, they don't get in. They weren't ready as far as like their faith and confidence in God. And so they get cast in the wilderness. 40 years later, they're back. This time, leading up to it, they had conquered some battles, like Moses and stuff. Then they walk around Jericho. They go in, and they like the walls fall flat. Again, just craziness when like what God did and how He did it. And then they get so. You know that they were like super excited, like we have arrived, right? And things are going to go great. They just won a battle that they didn't think so, and they knew on their own they would not win, basically. And so Joshua 7, they go and fight a little battle, this little country called Ai. And I don't know how you pronounce that. I don't know if it's AI, whatever. And it's not artificial intelligence, I'm pretty sure. But I know that's kind of a thing these days. But all right. So, verse 2 through 9. So he sends scouts into. This is interesting. He sends scouts into AI, and they come back and they say, "You don't even have to bring our whole army." Look at this. He says, Joshua sent men from Jericho to Ai, which is near Bethaven of Bethel, and said to him, go up and spy out the land. So the man went up and spied out Ai. They returned to Joshua and said, do not let all the people go up. Only about 2,000 or 3,000 men need to go up to Ai. Do not make the people go toil up there, for they are few. All right. So they're like, we got this. All right. But the problem was, at one point they had won a battle, and somebody took something that God had told them not to. All right. So they didn't know any of this. So they go and they fight Ai, and they get their tails whooped. And Joshua is confused. And he is like, what just happened? Why would you bring us here if we can't even beat this little country, right? And stuff like, so then God said, hey, somebody took something they weren't supposed to take. They've sinned against me. I'm not going to bless this, right? And so they go take care of it. They get it. They do. They punish. That guy gets punished, and then they start fighting battles, and they go back to Ai, and they win, and then they start fighting another battle, and they win. And then go to Joshua 7. Let's do something real quick. Go to Joshua 12. This whole chapter is kings that Israel defeated with Joshua. The whole thing's like 24 verses. And it's not like he's going into great depth. He says, start in like, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Just pick a verse between 7 and 23. Just pick and put. The king of Jericho won. That means they defeated him. The king of Ai, which is beside Bethel, won. Let's pick another one. Okay, the king of Jerusalem won. The king of Hebron won. The king of like he's just listing the kings that they went through and they whooped. And most of them, they didn't lose a person. Okay, so here it was. I want you, like, basically what he's saying is they finally got it. Okay, they went from, man, we cannot, these guys are giants. Now it does not matter what, and the thing is, when they're going through this, you don't see people taking stuff they're not supposed to anymore. Because they knew that they could not do it without God. All right? So like, I put that, I look at this as our, like, what does this have to do with us? Man, what does the Bible say? You go from glory to glory. That's what God's got planned for us. Not like a conquering lands type of thing. It's not, but like, I look at this and I'm like, man, God knew this was what he had in store for him. And what was he been thinking back when they were struggling? Right? He's like, if you just trust me. If you just trust me, and we can, like, oh my. Then we can do the 2 Peter thing. And we can be adding to these things, and you will not be unfruitful and stuff. Sorry. All right. So I want to close with this one little story. This. Well, let me say this about the 2 Peter thing. So one thing that's interesting is, like, you know, I think sometimes we think when we have to go to all the world, right, and share him and stuff, that we think, oh, we got. I remember going with Tracy and Elizabeth on the very first trip, and cruises to Africa, and it was the year before I met Sweetie and stuff, and right before the merger that Chris talked about, and and he gets up and he says, I want you to share the gospel. I did not know how to share the gospel. I was like, yeah, it was like being thrown into the deep end of the ocean, right? And that's Coos will do that and stuff. But now they also helped him say, okay, here's some ideas and stuff like that. And so I think sometimes we think that we've got to know how to do it, right? And we've got to, and so we kind of start thinking like, well, we need this program, like, or we need to know these verses, stuff like that. And what 2 Peter says is much more an inward thing flowing outward that is going to affect the world. You add the goodness, you add the self-control, and you are the light of the world. You are not going to have to worry about having the right words. It is going to happen. You are going to be fruitful. Nowhere in there does he say, and you say the right words, right? Like he said, like nowhere he says, you do these things and you say this and then you will be fruitful. No, it has nothing to do with being able to share the right thing. All you have to do is share him. And what like Chris talks about it all the time, like I just think we overcomplicate things. Final story. All right. So one of my favorite is where he's feeding the 5,000. Right? And he does it twice. Right? And so it's so cool because both times it follows the exact same pattern. First time they get up and they're like, these people are hungry, and he's like, well, go feed them, right? And he's like, they're like, we can't feed them, right? And he says, where's the fish? Where's the bread? And he starts handing out fish and bread, and he gives them fish, and they hand it out, okay? And so, where in that story did Jesus say, you're right, I'll do it? Who? Let me ask you this question: who gave them the food? Now, Jesus never said, "Go supply the food." But then when we say, like, when we think, go reach the world or whatever, or go impact your community or whatever, and then we take too much of it on ourselves. So the disciples, they go through this. The second time he's feeding 5,000, they said, the people are hungry. And God says, go feed them. And they said, well, we don't have enough food. They totally missed it. But what I'm saying is like, it's just like Joshua. We cannot win any battles. Nothing is going to happen without the Holy Spirit. All right? We do nothing on our own, right? But with him, if we just like do what he says, and like it, I really think it's that easy. We are literally just handing out what he gives us. What's my role as an elder? It's to continue to just hand out what he gave me. It's really not. I don't really view it as any more than that. I mean, like. There's some more responsibility and stuff, but like that's where I think that's basically my job is, and yeah, all right. Okay. One last story. This is not from the Bible. This is not from. Sorry. All right. So yesterday. Sorry. So yesterday, Misha was working, right? And I'm like, I tell Sweetie, I'm going to go get some donuts, and I'm going to go get Spaldings. And so, and she's like, well, go get some and take them to her work. And I was like, that's a great idea. It was not mine. I was going to get donuts for myself. But Sweetie was thinking of them, and I was like, that's really cool. So I do that. I get Spaldings, I take them in, and her boss is there, and he's like, oh, my. And this is so cool what he said. And he turns to Misha, and he says, Spaldings are supposed to be the best. And I was like, I thought maybe he never had them. right? I was like, have you ever had him? He goes, oh, yeah. And stuff. You realize that sharing the gospel is that easy? Because Jesus gave his best. All we got to do is, like, let them know. And so I'm going to turn things over to Chris. And that really was my last one. So